I don't know what to call this. I don't know, because I don't know what the calling is, And when you don't know what the calling is, you don't know what to call it. When you don't know what to call it, it's interesting what calls us. In those spaces where we don't really know it. Where we don't really know it. But yet it's still, there's a faint ring, It's like, when you miss the call but a voicemail gets left and that little ping shows up on your phone, like that's what it is. It's not the calling. It's not the calling. It's just the thing to let you know you've been called. It's not the calling though. It's not the calling. And that's the power, that's the discernment. The discernment there is important. The discernment there is very, very important. That distinction becomes quite powerful. And I look at this place, and often, I don't know how you feel, I have to believe that if you do watch this, there's something out of place about this. And if you're aware that there's something out of place about this, then you've received the ping. You've received the ping. You've received the ping for the missed call, because something has been calling you and you've been missing it. You've been missing it. And now the key now to get what that message is, to hear that story that's been waiting to be told, to hear the tale. The key is the voicemail. It's the voicemail. It is about getting that voicemail. And getting that voicemail, if we look at mail as in like I'm sending you mail or you got mail, like the voicemail is the message where your voice is. It's the message where your voice is within. It's when you hear that message, when you hear those words, when you hear that idea, when you get that spark inside of you, when you get that, you hear your voice. You hear your voice. Creatively we talk about finding our voice, finding our uniqueness, right? Particularly in oral art forms, in voice-based art forms, we talk about finding our voice. When you find your voice, when you find your voice through the mail that is for you, when you find your voice through the message that has been given to you, it does something incredible to what you to what you dial for next. It does something incredible to how you turn the dial of your daily life. It impacts it. It impacts it. It impacts it. It impacts it because I'm packed and you're packed. And it impacts it when you see what you're packed with. You then unpack it. It impacts it and it unpacks it. It impacts and unpacks. And so, you hear the ping on your phone, and you know that something is called. And perhaps it's called more than once. Perhaps you have multiple voicemails. I'll tell you, like, if I go right now on this actual phone that I'm recording this on, and I look, I have a ton of messages. I have like 71 voicemails on my phone, and honestly, I haven't really listened to them. I don't know what's there. Often we don't know what's there. We don't know what's in us. There's something in, and it's something in our hearts, right? There is something in our souls that we haven't heard yet, but it's sitting there waiting to be heard. It is a voicemail that has been left on the phone. And while it's left on the phone, you're just phoning it in. You're phoning it in. You're phoning it in, right? Now imagine this, you're phoning it in, meaning that you are, and you know what it means, because in your voicemail, in your unique voice that has a message, in your unique voice that has a message, in that message that holds your unique voice, you have the means. You know what it means because that's where the means is. And when I say you know what it means, when you know what it means, it's not about necessarily knowing how to use the means. It's not about knowing how to use the means. It's get rid of the knowing, using the means. You know, by any means necessary, it means that. By any means necessary, right? But you've got to listen first. You got to listen to the voicemail, right? You got to listen to those compiled messages, right? You got to check the email. You got to check the energy in the mail. You got to check the energy in the messages that have been pinging you, that have been ringing you without reply, you know? And I do this, I still do this. You know, I realize something from these videos, sometimes I use past tenses if I'm completely past them, as if those things don't still make me tense. They do. I do this, not just I've done it, I do it. Likely will do it, likely will redo it. Until I undo it, which is we'll get to undo. But you see, I have, if you look at my email, my Gmail, there is a ton of, I probably have like thousands of emails on my, that I haven't cleaned out. Some of those messages, some of the energy in that online mail is stuff that I are, you know, are past, are things that I've gotten past. Some of them are things that keep showing up because I haven't gotten past them. I haven't surpassed them. And perhaps I don't even need them. Perhaps I need them to get past. Perhaps what's in the writing of some of those messages is my rite to passage, you see? And I often don't check my, I just don't check it. And we have to check. We've got to check. You know, we assume that we don't have it sometimes. And my thoughts are that if you're hearing this, that it's for you somehow. That's my thoughts. That somehow this is for you if you're hearing it. If you're hearing this. So yeah, we don't check. So imagine you're getting these messages. You're getting the messages. You're getting the texts, right? You're getting the text. You're getting the context. You're getting the information. In you is something forming, right? These messages are informing you. In you are the things that are meant to form, to bring what you truly and fully desire. And you may not even know you desire. You may not even know. You know, it's like those dreams that you forget. You're like, God, you wake up and you're like, man, I've had this dream for a while, and my goodness, I just can't remember what it was. I can't remember what it is. but I've had this dream and it's reoccurring. But man, there's just parts that are fuzzy. There are things. Do we check? Do we check? And, you know, something that I do often, and I think this kind of fits anecdotally. I think there's an antidote in this for you and me. You know, something that I often do is I write messages to myself. Like I will, you know, if I need to remember something, or like, you know, if I do something like on my phone, write something on my phone on this particular device that I want to translate it to my other device, my computer or whatever. If it's a song, if it's just an idea, a voice memo, I will send it to myself. Like I'll email myself. And sometimes those energies, they could be from things outside, but sometimes there are also things inside. They're the things that are in you that have been forming. And so they're informing. Sometimes we send messages to ourselves. We send messages to ourselves. You ever have a moment like you have something that you just don't want to do, and then weird things happen, like you drop things that you typically wouldn't drop, or like you're like, oh man, this is just not for me. And you may not be saying that to yourself out loud or outwardly. You may be just like pushing yourself to go, but you're just things are just kind of not happening. Like you go to have a drink and you spill it all over your business suit, or your dress, or whoever this is that I'm addressing. You just, the salad dressing falls on your lap. And we do, when that happens, lap after lap after lap, when we find ourselves tripping and stumbling, like in that way, it's a way for us to receive a message sometimes. It's a way for us to receive a message. So what's the message? If this keeps happening time after time after time, again, there is something in us that's been forming to tell us of a way, to tell us of a story that is dying to come into life. That is dying to come into life. And so this energy shows up in the mail. It shows up in the messages that we're receiving, right? And that we're sending ourselves. Our unique voice is showing up in the mail. It's showing up in the messages. It's showing us, and it's impacting us. It means that I'm packed with these messages. It means that we're packed with these messages, right? And the key to using that impact is then to unpack. The key is the undo. It's the undo. I just fell into the spider web. But we get caught up in the webs of what has been working so far. We get caught up in the webs of what has been working so far. But there are things in those webs they intentionally catch us. And if you look at how a spider catches its prey, it traps you in the web. You get tangled up. You get tangled up in the web. And then the spider bites you, puts its venom in you, right? And so I'm using these anecdotes because I think there's an antidote in there to the venom and the poison that we have positioned ourselves to receive. That we have been positioning ourselves to receive. And I think we need to reposition. And I think we need to not redo, but to undo certain things. And certain things that we've pursued for a long time. But you gotta open the mail. You gotta open that mailbox. You gotta unpack the things that have impacted you. Unpack the things that have impacted you. you know, those pings, and they always annoy me, like pings like that, like especially like if I'm in the middle of doing something and I get one of those pings, I'm like, ah, but they're meant to be annoying. They're meant to be annoying, and they're meant to be gnawing. And there are things that are gnawing at you, things that just been annoying you about the things that you've been doing. Perhaps you should be reviewing those things. Perhaps you should look at the energy that these messages have within them. How has your energy been when you're doing that thing that you shouldn't be in? That relationship, that trip that just does a circle, you know, like a merry-go-round. It's a trip to come back around, and we do things to distract us. We do things to keep us merry as we go around these same cycles. And you know, life is to me, life isn't full circle. It's full spiral. And what can happen is one of two things. You can go up the spiral, and similar things will show up in different ways, in different forms, as you go up the spiral, right? But when those things come up, you will be at higher levels to receive them, and you'll be at higher levels to deal with them, and you'll be at higher levels to ascend with them, so that those problems at a lower level of the spiral become solutions at the higher. But there's another option. There's another option. It's the whole hero's journey when the character refuses to accept the call. It's going downward, right? It's spiraling downward. And when you have those words, when you have those ideas, when you have those thoughts, when you have those inclinations that have been in conversation with you for a while, and sometimes they're in conversation not through an actual conversation in terms of me saying this and you saying that and us being on the phone or us being in person. Sometimes it's through the voicemail. Again, sometimes it's just you getting the messages later on with that energy, right? Getting those messages later on that have your voice. You know, it's taken me a while. You know, I've had this in my artistic journey where it's just like I go and I'll be on my, you know, I'll be doing different things. I'll rap, or I'll tell a story, or I'll do something, and do a poem, and then be like, huh, that was whack. And then like years later, I'll go back, you know, I'll hear that message again. I'll be like, wow, that had something in it. Sometimes we can't always see what's in it. Sometimes we can't see what's in us. For me, that's been oftentimes. You know, for me, that has been oftentimes. It's hard to see what is in us. It's hard to believe what is in us, but we gotta believe. We gotta believe. But part of that believing is that unpacking. It's unpacking the things that are impacting you, so that you can then make a pact of what is true. What is true? Possible. It's possible. It's possible that you are going downward on the spiral. It's possible that you're going upwards on the spiral. But here's where it gets really interesting. Here's where it gets really vital, because the abilities that you can open the messages at any point in time. They're there. They're there. They are chilling there. You can open them at any point in time. You know, when the way that a spring, you know, if you look at I don't know, imagine a cartoon where a character has spring shoes, and the way that the springs work is that, like, when you're walking around normally, you know, the springs, they kind of go up and down. But when you go to jump, you kind of, you know, you bend down and the springs actually compress downward, right? What comes up comes down. What comes up meets what comes down, and the spring compresses. And then when you attempt to jump, it you know, it unpacks. It bursts forth. Imagine that moment where the spring comes together in those shoes and in the midst of what you're trying to jump to. Imagine that is the higher version, that higher point on the spiral, meeting your lowest point. Your highest point meeting your lowest point. Meaning that at any point in time, you can realign. At any point in time, you can realign what matters so that you can spring forth, so that you can spring up, so you become like a spring. So you can be a spring in your own life. So bursting with revitalization, with hydration, with the energy and those messages that you actually unpack to receive, that you uncork to retrieve. The messages in the bottle, the ones that have been bottled up inside of you, that you've been looking to see. It's calling you. It's been calling all along. It starts by checking your mail. It starts by checking the things that have been impacting you. It starts with making a pact with your calling. That when it rings again, you're gonna perceive it. You'll pick up. Sometimes that'll be picking up for the first time, picking yourself up from where you've been. Sometimes that'll be picking up where you left off. But what I hope you and I will do is the next time when it calls, that we'll answer.